Hi, this is Sheila with Conscious Conversation Central, and it is Friday, December the 15th, 2017. Excuse me, I have chocolate in my mouth. Because I'm celebrating. Ha ha ha. Anyway, I'm joined this evening with by BZ Rigger and Lisa Rush, and we aren't real sure exactly what we want to talk about. I do have one topic that I wanted to bring up. I kind of hinted to you at it, BZ, before, and I hinted at it a little bit in Lisa and my conversation earlier today. I had an experience that I kind of would love to get your take on, BZ. On Monday, I was in my car and I got a phone call from someone whose permission I do not have, so I won't name names. However, this person I would describe as someone who's kind of had the covers up over their head and the pillow down over their face. And they had an experience where they encountered something quite scary to them. Mm-hmm. They were in the presence of other people, a child and an adult. Not these folks were he'd met them before, but didn't really know them. Knew that they spoke English, but there was and heard some English, but then also heard a language he didn't recognize. He actually said to me that he thought they might be speaking in tongues, the older woman. But the child reacted as if in that moment she was terrified of him and he hadn't done anything. This was in a business setting. And he was confused by that. And when he turned to the adult, who was the child's mother, he said that her eye sockets were black. There were no eyes there, and he was totally freaked out by this experience. Now, my guidance told me that he was confronted with an aspect of himself that was being shown to him for integration. And I shared that. And I just was wondering what your take on that might be. I know that's kind of maybe unfair to you to ask for your take on that, but.
Well, actually it's interesting because some things were coming to mind before you even explained it all, that I wasn't surprised when you mentioned the eyes and all that kind of stuff.
I noticed that.
Yeah. One question I do have, when the daughter was nervous of this person that you talked to, was the mother behind the person so the daughter could have been looking at the mother too?
No. The daughter apparently reacted to him first and saw she was standing on a staircase when he entered, and she saw him. Again, he's not a stranger, that she had seen him before, and there was nothing like this before. But he said the terror on her face, he was just confused by what he saw in her face.
Well,
and when he came around the corner to speak to the mother is when that happened.
Yeah. It's a little hard to give a full sense from the information you've given, but just to go on my initial picking up, like I said, as you were talking about it, I wasn't surprised to hear that the mother had that look in her face. And the clarity you just gave on the daughter, and it seems that there was an entity in the building behind him, and that's what the daughter was seeing. So it could have been close enough overlaid that the daughter would have thought that maybe she could see this entity superimposed over your friend.
Mm-hmm.
or that it was just there and in the same, like right here, the same general direction. So if she's looking this way,
Right.
unless you were really aligning the eyes and everything, what it would look like. And then what he's seeing was that entity come through that person. So actually took possession of that person. It's interesting you mentioned he thought they were speaking in tongues.
Yeah, because he said
So that all of that kind of blends together there. This is actually happening an awful lot right now. And it seems to be happening an awful lot to people who are asleep, or particularly intentionally trying as best they can to stay asleep, keep pulling the head. And what it is yes, it can be some parts within them, but the different instances that I've heard, and I've heard a number of these stories recently, and then that I know of direct experience of knowing, and then also hearing recounting of them from other people that I've had direct experiences with for many, many, many years. So, can take that as a next step from my direct experience of knowing.
Okay.
And they're they are entities, so they're other. The entities is the way I would recall to them, because I'm not sure what dimensional frequency they're holding, but they're not pure human beings by any stretch of the imagination. And they are of a very lower vibration, probably fourth density entities.
Okay.
Could be jinn type entities or demonic type entities.
Okay.
And one of the reasons that it's a very common occurrence kind of in a broad spectrum way right now is because of the shift in energies, and the frequencies across the board are raising. And it's kind of like a dust bunny. If you move the bed, it's really then hard to be a dust bunny under the bed if the bed's gone, because someone can vacuum you or these kinds of things, right? So you use that as a loose analogy with the energy. So they're all rising, the bed's moving, and there aren't those places, those pockets and pools, places to hide. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that does.
But a lot of people are noticing these things, and they realize that this is a genuine. They're not just crazy; it really happened, but they don't really want to mention it to anybody because they don't want to think about it again. I mean, it was such a shock to them.
I gotcha.
So it's bleed throughs of different things, and yeah, you can have some really bad, nasty encounters with these kinds of things. And one of the quickest ways to deal with that is to stop pulling the pillow over your head.
Well, of course.
Sorry, I mean, I'm not trying to be flippant about it, but it's really the case. So, there's a what's the quote? There's a lot more on heaven and earth than whatever, and all of the things, whether you've the collective you have noticed it before, paid attention, or believe in it, or it doesn't matter, because it still exists. So
right.
Just because you're saying, well, that's ridiculous, or that's baloney, or that's this, or that's that, that's fine, but it doesn't doesn't really matter. It's like if someone says something about brushing something off about coincidences or this, that, and the other thing. And sure, again, that's another pillow. So when you do the hand flick like this and you brush it off, that's another pillow, because those are signals that are coming and you're rejecting them. And as you reject them, you're actually piling more stuff on you. And what happens is, and you can just start singing, and then that raises your vibration too.
There you go. It works for Keegan.
But what happens is as you keep to brush these things off, you're getting more tests. You're getting more things to come around in front of you to get you to wake up and pay attention and to show you. So if you're in a frequency vibration that is putting the pillow over your head and not noticing and really going on autopilot and all these kinds of things and different ways to language them depending on what the circumstances are in someone's life. So you're actually now in that energy field, and you'll keep attracting more of that to be ways to come and open you up to those energies that are there, because you cannot not rise with the energies. The only way you cannot do that is to be incredibly uncomfortable, and that's a really pale, polite phrase to describe it, or hop off Gaia,
Right.
And that threshold of incredibly uncomfortable being a pale, polite way to describe it is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Yes. And so when someone has a shock like that, it's, okay, wow, starting to pay attention so that the next little thing that happens, or the next time that small conversation comes in from their higher self or selves and the soul, they might choose on their own, because it's free choice. So they might choose on their own to pay attention to that.
I see.
Nothing is forced on it, but because we're all moving and changing, and Gaia's, she's way racing ahead. It's just the way it is.
Right.
Kind of, it's the reverse of, and it's headed all in a really fabulous, terrific, orgasmic, amazing place. It just is, there's some growing pains in that, right? But if you think about it the other way around, I mean, we've already been in this place where it's gotten more and more and more and more and more uncomfortable, because the constraints have been more and more and more and more and more, because the energy has been going down and down and down and down, and the screws have been being put to us, because of the cabal and all these different things, and our own cabals. I mean, the own things within inside of us that we're doing the same kinds of thing, because as above, so below, in and out, all that kind of thing. We're quantum.
Right.
And so we're now in a place where everything has completely shifted, and we're now having the sorting out, the fallout of that, those kinds of things, and it's moving up. So we're going in the right direction. Hold it in different ways. And there are, it's just like, well, depending on the person and where in the birth system they are in, but, having a baby can be great and painful, but there's something good at the end.
Right.
Yes, it's worth it in the end. Yeah.
Okay. So then, being that we are all one and just different aspects, it is now I'm trying to see where my own guidance took me in that moment as I was speaking to this person, because my feeling on it was that they were being shown an aspect of themselves for integration, especially since this is someone who's been pulling the pillow up over their, down over their face, and the covers over their head.
Well, from one perspective, that can be actually accurate, because it's just another way to say what I was saying. So it's still, that doesn't preclude it from being an entity separate from this being.
Right.
Okay? So the being you spoke about on the phone and saw this and freaked out and all that kind of stuff. So it was still an entity, but it is a true perspective to say it was reflecting something of this person, because when this person is pulling the pillow over their head and they're not listening and they're on autopilot and they may not be in a service to self, flow of things. So that is, that's a reflection, because that kind of entity is a service to self entity,
right,
of energy. right? So,
Yeah.
but one of the reasons that, I mean, there's layers to why it might have done it and manifested, but on the expansive side of the raising the vibration side that it could have happened is, again, from the, to that would fit into your perspective that you had, is that this is an aspect,
Right.
you know, a reflection of something that's there.
Right.
But the entity was still there.
Yes. Okay. That makes sense.
And
I hadn't.
the irony is that these entities have always been here.
Right.
And these other kinds of beings from different dimensional vibrational frequencies and hybrids of human and other things combined have always been here. But the energies being low before and so dense hid those masks. And so we just saw the mask that was the face of very well-known names. Household names.
Yes.
And you could be in lots of different countries and they'd be household names. So and others, you know, depending on your country, less famous or more famous, or, you know, well known, or those kinds of things. So
Right.
that's what all of this reveal is about. You know, it's the reveal. Just as all of each being is revealing. So that's not something to get freaked out about, but you're revealing, you know, your creator beingness. You're revealing the past that you, and the totality of who you are, and then the other aspects of you, of where you've been and what you've focused on. And because a lot of us, you know, again, that's where judgment is a sharp, tricky blade to run down. Well, you know, those are bad people or did this. Well, you know, I mean, since you've been around and you're multidimensional and you've been doing a whole lot of things in all sorts of dimensions and all sorts of galaxies and multiverses, you know, I can guarantee you that me, you, all of us have done different things that, from this perspective, right in these chairs, we could say, well, you bad dude, right? You know, so because we're all, right?
Right.
So that's why that is a tricky road to go down. It's kind of like when you have somebody, and, you know, whether it's at work or a friend or whatever it is, and you send something to them and you don't hear from them, and you get all pissy about it. You make up all these things that they don't like me and yada, 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 yada. And you know, you send them an email or you leave them a voice message and you ring them, and come to find out, you know, they got in a car accident or something happened. And it's like, oops, you know. But that kind of thing is, first of all, what is it in you that's lighting you up to go there? And that's where the integration and all that kind of stuff comes in. So, but this is we're talking on a, you know,
Right.
multiverse scale of that.
Right. But it has to start right there first, doesn't it? I mean, for me, it does.
Right, with each individual being.
Right. I have to.
Yeah.
For me, I have to say, okay, what is it? Well, which is why I actually went the direction I did before we started recording, you know, when I was relating my manifestation story that we were talking about earlier before we started recording, that Lisa and I recorded about earlier. Same thing. That's for me. I always try to figure out, why am I feeling what I'm feeling? Am I certain what I'm feeling is this, or is it this?
Mm-hmm.
Especially when it comes to the possibility of being fearful of something. Because
or projecting, well, which is the same kind of thing, or projecting something onto someone else.
Right.
And, you know, why is it lighting you up?
Right.
And unfortunately, oftentimes, and I know why that is, and a collective why, oftentimes it lights people up in the way of self-doubt or self-worth and those kinds of things, because that's ingrained, because that's what's the best program. You know, if you're going to set a constant, steady dial on the stream of and frequency of feeding on all different levels, through the air, through the TV, through the food, through the schooling, through the medication, through everything, right? the setting on that dial is the self-worth, because the more you can put that in, then if they're so busy focused on over here, then they're not going to get even a whisper of the magnificence of who they really are. So keep looking them over here. So that there's no coincidence. There's no, it's all by design that that's a predominant one, you know, and fear or anger usually are direct threads of all those, again, because it puts us in that direction.
Right.
And my impression of these entities too is that they're parasitical. And so I feel like they feed off of certain behaviors, because I even noticed it and dealt with it in my own life, that there were things that I was doing which were attracting things to me, and that was growing, that energetic. Right. So again, that's why it's important to me to look here and find out why this is happening, and deal with it right from inside, because obviously I attracted it for a reason.
Yeah, another way to phrase that would be that the behavior actually has an emotional, energetic signature component to it, and that's what it is that they ride on. And sure. Because it's also it's a way into for manipulation and control. The other thing, so that's a very good way to phrase it, but that's in a small window of understanding. A lot of, I don't know if we want to go far down because people are going, whoa, this is really, you guys are freaky usually, but this is weird freaky. Anyways,
sorry.
There's nothing off the table. And
a lot of it is, well, and I don't know that much about it, so I can only, dabble in my explanation of it. But a lot of it is generational. In other words, the contracts and the hosting and the parasitic relationship goes on in life for lifetimes. Whether it's your lifetime as you keep coming into different, in physical bodies, or through a lineage, or through different, contracts and so on as a given. So, but yeah, if you're letting yourself be in a space where, especially when you since you have the choice to choose to wake up, I keep saying, and it's true, nobody's lacking anything. We don't have any, we're not missing any ingredients to wake up to, know this or understand this or see that or connect those dots. It's just, are we committed to that, and are we refocusing? Because another way to say it is, before we got here on this planet, we knew we had missions. We agreed to do this, and then we came in and we had the amnesia, and we went through all of our different things, and a lot of it you could and again, when I'm giving examples, these are kind of placeholders because it's just one, and I can show you and look at it from different perspectives as you widen out. But so sometimes, if I give you something, it's one perspective, which is a fairly tight, like an aperture on a camera, tight focus in on that. When we come, then we also get the opportunity to recommit to that mission and agreement that we had on the expansive side before we came in. Right. And it may be that we just think it's too hard, or the amnesia is hard, or whatever it is. But if you look around at beings who seem to be awake and seem to be connected and seem to be having expansive experiences and seem to be able to, do things that you can see as a reflection of those expansiveness, right?
Yes. Right.
Oftentimes that's because at whatever stage it was in this, from a linear perspective in this lifetime, that they recommitted, they somehow tapped into what they said, around, as I call it, around the campfire on the beach, the multiverse there before we were talking about coming in here. And then they're recommitting to it. Some that's, was a week ago or 6 weeks ago or a year or two or 30 or 40 or whatever it was, depending on
right.
But so when you're doing that, when you're not doing that, and when you're pulling the wool over your eyes and the pillow over your head, particularly if you had an important thing that you agreed to do. So if your piece of what was it was an important thing to come and do, it was going to be expansive, it was going to be a puzzle piece that fit in a certain way, that, you know, all these things. And you do that, then you actually are ripe for some kinds of and some levels of these entities to come and jump on the bandwagon of the pillow over your head thing, because you don't want, because this is great. I mean, as far as they're concerned, that's great. There's a lot of energy to feed off of here. There's a lot of ways to keep this person down. We would like that. That's great, because we don't want them to, you know, peek their eyeball out from underneath the pillow and go, oh,
and vanish us.
Wait a minute. I remember, you know, that kind of thing.
So now that feels important to me to hear you say that. So if a person is beginning, because this particular person is aware, has made the statement that they know they're a creator being, and has wondered if, and has actually stated perhaps that is the choice that they're making, to not to make the choice to leave the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And also to keep pulling the wool over their
right. That is a statement.
So that's a piece you didn't get before. So that then expands it even more, because what they're seeing, and that's where you can hear described in different ways. I'll go on that in a minute. So that's, you hear it described in certain ways. So when they have the entity come in, that's showing them the playground that they're choosing to hang out in. Because that's, you know, in a simplistic, although really, you know, eye-popping, like you said, this person was, whoa, freaked out. Okay, but that's where you're hanging out with.
Right.
It's just as simple as that.
Well, I think that might be why I chose the words that I said, or why I felt like it was something that, okay. So yeah, no, I apologize. I should have told you that. Yeah. Part of an earlier conversation with that person.
Yeah. I mean, everything that I've sensed, I stick by that makes from the picture you painted, but that's an important piece, because it's a very good reflection that this being is playing in that area, and that's what's around. Those are your neighbors, is one way to phrase it.
Right.
Those are the neighbors hanging out in that energy, frequency, vibration, and if that's a choice, great, go for it. But that's what you get.
Yeah. Right.
You know.
So interesting.
If that's what you want for your neighbors, cool. Because you know what? They got a lot of friends.
Yeah.
and the party's at your house.
And so, and they might, you know, they probably hang out with hellhounds and all sorts of things that, again, that you think may just be fictional, and no.
Yeah. Not so much.
Not so much.
Yeah. Okay, so, you know, in that kind of a vein, if you have someone who feels that they are aware of that sort of thing, that they are a creator being, and that perhaps that's the choice they're making. And again, like you said, no judgment. If they make the choice that they do want to change their mind, obviously that's a given, being a creator being. Do you feel that, because it seems clear, given the with my own self, I'm thinking of how it's been, you know, and I guess I'm doing it to myself, obviously, but as we're trying to oh, there I go with the trying. As we are remembering
Mhm.
and recognizing who we are, not everything comes clear all at once. And so,
depending on each individual, and yeah, I mean
right, well,
some
there's,
people it's literally like the light went on and they're like, wow. Did you ever see the movie Paul?
no.
Great movie, great. Okay, it's I refer to it as a great movie simply because Paul is the name of an alien. He's actually a gray, but he's a nice gray in this. But it's a good movie because of the target audience and demographics that it's at. It gets a lot of information out there and a lot of things for people to think about in a vehicle, to use the movie term, in a vehicle that, it's just fun. We're going to a movie and whatever. So it's a good way to get it in there. But one of the things in the movie, he goes and he puts his right here in his hand, right on someone's forehead, and the I won't spoil. So the person pitches over backwards, and someone's like, "Man, what'd you do?" Oh, chill out, he says, and in that moment, what's happened is the being has gone all the way back to source, and then the memory comes out from there of all the different incarnations and lifetimes and experiences and expansion, and it's like, and this particular character was like so far down various metaphoric rabbit holes with religion and this and that and the other thing, that as a setup piece for that very scene right there, that it's so the dichotomy between the two positions are really poignant to research. But that's actually what we go through. So as you said, some people take some things away. Some you can go through jumps where a lot of times when you stop asking why, or you're surprised by something, and it's just the next logical step. Mm-hmm. Although in that meaning, the logical step is actually a quantum jump, right? But from a linear perspective, you would describe it as the next logical step, because you're here and then you get all this other information, and instead of going, well, that's weird, or wonder that, or whatever, now it's here, and now you're this next step, and you don't question it, because it's like, do you question that you've got 2 arms and 2 legs? And no, because that's what there is. So oftentimes we get that where we'll move in a jump, and we have a split second where we kind of look around, and maybe it's a new ability, or it's a new awareness, or a new understanding, or whatever the new thing is. And it's just a tiny split second where we might notice the newness of it, like it wasn't there a millisecond ago, and now it is. And then it's gone, because it is. It simply is.
Right.
And you don't have the perspective to realize that it's new, because it is. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Once you're in it.
Yeah, you level up, and that's your new normal.
Right. I mean, you don't walk through the door every 5 minutes going, well, that's a door. That's a door. Right? It's a door. Yeah, and you walk through it. In fact, you don't even notice that you're walking through the door. Now, if you put a new door on the house, or you put a new coat of paint on, you might go, oh, I like the color paint, and you walk through it a couple of times and it's gone. But so all of that is compressed in a nanosecond, because it just is the door.
Right.
You go through it. It's really that simple. And you can be when I give that example, I mean, you can be talking about seeing entities, or hearing about them, or you can be talking about abilities, or it could be the most, if you're watching a movie and this scene was taking place in a movie, you would go, whoa, that scene blew my mind, because it's a movie. And you have, but it's that instant integration so that now it is, and now it is. So there's just a tiny, it takes less time than that. So if you can remember that one moment, but oftentimes you can't even recount it as a story because you have to work really hard to be able to recount it as a story because it's so now just is that to parse that out. And remember, there was some call I was on recently, I was trying to describe that when you're using something as a story, if there's a conversation going somewhere or someone's asking a question or they want to, they're having an expansion around something, then in that moment, that piece might come back forward to use it as an illustrative point, a story, to then, but you haven't remembered it. The only reason that it comes forward right that moment, and unless you listen to the recording, you forget it again. Because it simply is. It's only the only value, whether it's negative or positive, it doesn't matter, and labeled as such. The only value is that it's illustrative in that moment for, people who are on that frequency.
I see.
Well, and I'll tell you how I notice when so I feel like I have done that. And I call this, I change my past. And it's because I integrate the experience and I grow from it. And in my own growth, my past changes. And what I mean by that is I relate to it differently. So like BZ said, I can recall it. It can come back to me, but usually in a way like you were describing when I'm sharing something. Now, when I was the story and I was a throbbing open wound, I couldn't tell that story without being there and being traumatized and feeling like a victim and having it all just, I couldn't even talk about it because it brought me to that place. When I healed it, I could still recall the experience, but it was more like looking at a photograph. It was a flat picture. It wasn't something that enveloped me and that I relived again and again. So when the trigger's gone, when it doesn't trigger you to relive it, then I feel like it's been healed because now it just is.
Well, yeah, you and I discussed that before. You and I discussed that specific topic before, because that has come up for me, as you know, in my life in a specific situation, and I feel the same way you do because I couldn't understand why. I mean, the story was traumatic.
Mm-hmm.
What happened was traumatic. And there's a person in my life who couldn't wrap their minds around why it was no longer traumatic for me. And I didn't realize until Lisa shared with me that specific, what you just said again. Oh, then I realized, that's why it doesn't affect me that way.
And that part is the most important part, or the crystallizing of that illustration you gave was when I was the story.
Right.
When I was the story. We're not our stories.
No.
But the ego mentality, mind, and that vibration puts us as the story.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say then, because I would you say then that because this has come up a lot for me too, in dealing with one or two folks in my life, where I have felt that whatever that story is still occurring in some way. for them, for them. And because I don't react a way that fits that story, then there's something wrong with me, or that's the assumption.
I love that reaction, Busy.
Yeah, that's my reaction too, by the way. That's kind of my reaction too.
I'm laughing at the whole. Well, it's beautiful programming, isn't it? I mean, it's beautiful programming. You're not following the script. There's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
You have a role to play within this pigeonholed script because we don't look beyond that, and it's not fitting. And if it's, if it's this horror thing, then you should be always a victim and always a horror, or always the aggressor, whatever role you played, in it, right?
Yeah.
No, it's not at all the case.
Right.
Because here's a light bulb. We're creator beings, and we're multidimensional, and we're infinite. So if we're just playing one tiny little teensy weensy moment over and over, we got a lot of other things to do. We can't, it was an experience. It was something that we went through, created, had to roll in. All of those perspectives are true.
Mm-hmm.
And it just was.
But it's not who you are.
No.
Not forever and ever.
No,
never.
but here's the irony. People have more trouble wrestling with and owning the truth of who they are than they do playing with the horrific stories. No, it's not scary, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
that I don't get. But I see that it happens all the time, but I don't get it.
Well, to be honest with you, now that I get it, now that I get that I'm a creator being, I see your point. I really do. And I'm with you. And I don't get it either.
It's a free will choice. It's absolutely free will choice. And again, and I don't mean to sound harsh in this, but it's a free will choice. And it's also other beings' free will choice. When someone comes around with the story and the story and the story and the story, I'm good. I love you. I am happy to dance and play with you in all sorts of ways, but I will not dance there. And
Right.
for me, there's two reasons I won't do that. One, because when I dance there with you, I actually bring myself into that vibrational frequency.
Mm-hmm.
And if I was to step out of what is and go back into the different things, you know what? And if we wanted to do trumping of stories, I got a big pile. So I don't really think you want to dance with that pile, right? Number one. So I don't want to go back in. I've done that. I'm good. Thanks.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, when you do that, it's a serious, and it's disservice is a very pale description of it. It's a serious disservice to that other being to do that. And I won't do that. For me to do something that the audacity of me to do something like that because I would knowingly do it is an egregious crime's not the right word, but an egregious, trying to think of a linear description to paint the picture that's coming in, but it's an egregious conflict to do that.
Well, it serves nothing, in my view.
Well, yeah, but it's even worse than that.
Well, yeah, it's worse than that, but it does nobody any good.
Right.
Is what I meant.
Right. But it's when I say egregious in the sense that it's an intentional harm actually that's being caused.
Well, for the other being as well as yourself?
Well, yeah, that I'm causing. Because I have a knowingness, I have a a broader perspective and a knowingness. So, in essence, I would be making a choice that was an egregious choice to another being.
Because I'm responsible for my creations.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I don't want to play down there.
Right.
And I know that I'm a creator being, and I know how I can hold the space and play with that. So I open up the envelope of the play that being is playing in, and can add more richness and dimension and vibrancy, and we're talking about a really, really bad thing. So imagine that. I'm not gonna do that. That's an egregious thing to do.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that biblical scripture about to know the truth and to ignore it is worse than to not know it at all.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what you're saying there.
Yeah.
Because now you're inflicting intentional harm.
Right.
Wow.
Well, thank you for that, because that feels pretty big. I used to.
Yeah.
Well, I feel there were times I was feeling guilty because I didn't want to dance in those energies. And
that's an example right there of you going, now you've taken on and swimming in those energies. When you say I was feeling guilty for that, you actually were. You said I was guilty because I didn't want to dance in those energies, but you were dancing in those energies, which is why the guilt came up and that whole other programming path came up. You shouldn't stay there very long.
Okay.
Right.
Well,
but I mean because the frequency vibration of that emotion of being guilty of X, Y, and Z is in that lower vibrational signature. And so to even feel it, you have to be at least
right
in the upper atmosphere.
Well, true, it doesn't last very long.
Of that, right?
Yeah, it is true that it doesn't last very long, because they're like, okay, well, I'm done with that. Thank you very much.
Right. So just to go back to that one point again about the egregious part. So you'll hear a lot of times, well, you hear it in Star Trek, but it also is how a lot of other civilizations, the non-interference, the prime directive of the non-interference. So that egregiousness is a part of that.
Right.
Okay.
It's serious. Don't do that. I mean, choose to do whatever you want to do, but I won't do that.
No, no, it's not that, because, well, I guess I'm thinking in terms of there's a not quite sure how to word it. There's a well, I have, for whatever reasons in my life, either obviously made myself responsible for things that were never my responsibility to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And as I have undertaken correction of those situations, there's been surprise. There's been
well, people get pissed off because you won't play in the mire with them.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
Basically.
let's call a low frequency vibration what it is. It's really annoying.
And a non-understanding, a non-understanding of why, that sort of thing.
And do you understand, does it occur to you one of the reasons that there is that reaction?
Well, I know what I think it is, yeah.
What?
Well, there is specific programming of theirs.
Yeah, and
that I helped over a lifetime or, you know, years and years and years, at least in some cases, perpetuate until I knew better, until I understood better.
Yeah. No, but what I was saying, when they get pissed off that you won't come down and play down there, one of the reasons that there's always lots of layers to it, but one of the layers to it is that then it causes them to pause and catch a little louder that soft voice and the prompting to take the pillow off the head. And it also it's like an energetic pull on them to raise them up, and they're doing it to themselves to raise them up, you know, at least a smidge off the ground of that layer that they're on.
I see.
And so they're faced with, well, a lot of times they would describe it, or it with a perception would be of fear, because they like being in this mire because it's comfortable. And, you know, so that's part of the reason that response is elicited from, you're eliciting that response from them.
I see. Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that. That's helpful.
So in actuality, if you're holding it from that perspective, by not dancing with them, you use the thing, well, I was sometimes feeling guilty not going there, but you're giving an amazing gift by not going there, because you're doing you're eliciting that response to do those two things that I just mentioned. And sometimes, you know, if you ever walked, you got shoes on and you walk and there's thick mud and you trying to get your foot out, and then your foot comes out of your shoe, right? You know,
Right.
and but you were stuck. So if you just get over as you walk through with your socks in the mud, and now you're out of the mud, and you go, I'm in the mud, right?
Right.
So you're giving them that gift there, and it's choosing. So they, you know.
Right. Well, I have recognized the guilt or whatever that is for programming that I still had that had to be, you know, dealt with. And so, yeah. Wow. Well, all righty then. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, that was good. Well, I would like to end this one here, if that's all right with you ladies, and we don't have to end totally, but let's, if it's all right with you, I'd like to end this video and I don't know, maybe discuss something else, if that's all right with you guys.
Yeah,
So,
probably good to make them shorter so that.
Yes.
yeah, because our last one was like 2 hours, I think, and then the after show was an hour, so that's cool. I mean, I thought it was cool, but you know, that's okay. So there'll be a subscribe button and another video, because they make you do that. There will be links to BZ's log at the IUV and to Lisa's too. And there will also be a link to Conscious Conversation Central in the Show More section of this video. And would love to hear comments from all of you. What are you seeing out there as far as, you know, folks that you're dealing with that pull the covers over their, you know, faces and the pillow down over their head? What are some of the things that are happening for you? Any comments? I'd love to hear more. I do read them. And my email will also be in the body of the video.
And what entities you've seen.
Yes. Any experiences, open to all of that. And if you've had an experience that you'd like to come on to Conscious Conversation Central and to talk about, the information's there for you to reach out. So until next time, thank you ladies for joining on this one.
Bye.
Bye.